just briefly, because you bring this up, so I'm going to respond to this actually with a cautionary tale, sort of a funny cautionary tale, but not really funny, as in more just kind of informative. This is not me saying that I'm so great or know so much. I want to be very clear about that. But I am going to relay the story, and I can only relay it from my perspective, from what I saw. In my restaurant, this is years ago, in my restaurant that I owned, I was making food. You know, I was doing a bunch of prep and I was making food, and one of my suppliers had come in. One of the sales reps from a large company, I won't say the name, but it was a large company, had come in, and I didn't really buy a lot from them, only because most of the stuff that we made was all fresh. So we made a lot of stuff that, you know, from raw ingredients and from fresh. I didn't really like the idea of doing a lot of pre-processed stuff. I'm kind of with Gordon Ramsay and a few other chefs on this. I really like trying to make the stuff, you know, and we all did. All of us that worked in my restaurant, my wife, and so, like, we all worked very hard to make really high quality food that was genuinely flavorful, right? And that you could taste it. Even though it was considered to be fast food, I never considered it fast food. I just, that's what customers, that was their perception was fast food. My perception was, no, I'm actually trying to make the highest possible quality product. And of course, this is why I'm no longer in that business, because I would be charging a fortune for that food now, and nobody would pay it. No matter how good it was, they wouldn't pay it because it would be just too expensive. So, but he came in, and I was doing some prep, and he was talking with me, and he was watching me weigh cheese, you know, and he says, and this supplier, he says, you're the first person I've ever seen weigh their food ingredients. And I stopped and I said, what do you mean? And he says, I've talked to tons of business owners, managers of businesses, giant restaurants, giant restaurant chains, you name it. He says, you're the first one I've ever seen actually weigh out all their product and portion everything. And I said, are you being serious? I don't know if he was joking or not, because he had kind of a dry sense of humor. He's one of those guys that you couldn't really tell. And he says, no, I'm being serious. He says, I've never seen anybody actually like portion all this. And I had to kind of stop, and I'm like, well, how the hell do they know what their profit margins are? How do they know what their costs are? How do they know what their profit margins are? How do they know what to set their percentages? How do they know how to calculate their labor? Like, how do you calculate any of that stuff if you don't have any kind of foundation in your business? How the hell do you not portion things properly and understand what you're portioning? You know, from a business standpoint, how do you not do that, right? And he just said, like, dude, I've never seen it. You know, I mean, most people, they just, you know, like, whatever. And so, to your comment, which is what made me think of with this, is that there are a lot of people that are in business that nobody has ever bothered to explain any of this stuff to them. And they just went into business, you know, just like with, you know, the comment comes from, I think I was talking about real estate. There's a lot of rental bros or people who go into real estate not really fully understand what they're getting themselves into, that you're trying to go into a business model, or you're supposed to. You're supposed to go into a business model, not just hip shot it, make a bunch of money, and then that's slop shot. That's not playing pool from skill. You're just hitting the ball as hard as you can and hoping they go in a pocket. And maybe it works, right? Statistically, you hit the ball hard enough, eventually it will go into a pocket, right? Well, that's what a lot of people are doing. They're not actually using any skill. Skill is one of those things that is almost all but completely forgotten now, particularly at the corporate level. It's getting so bad. In fact, the competency crisis has gotten so bad. In fact, I'll share this with you. This is unrelated, but I'll share this with you. When companies knew boomers were going to be retiring, they knew this was going to come like 10, 15 years ago. How many of those companies then decided, okay, we better find people, young people with aptitude, and then get them in here and start training them over the next 10 to 15 years, so that way there's a nice smooth transition, so that when our older generation retires, our newer generation they're right there. They're just as competent, they know what's going on, the long-term health of the company is secured. How many CEOs think like that? None of them that I've ever seen. None. Out of the Fortune 1000, I don't think there's even one that thinks like that. They are thinking about what is next quarter going to be like. Am I going to make bonuses? Am I going to pay out dividends? That's it. That's all they give a fuck about. They don't give a shit about any of the long-term health of the company, because that's the next guy's problem. Because a lot of CEOs are like, you know what, I'm just going to retire and I'm going to take off and go sit on a beach with my big bag of money, and it's the next guy's problem. There's no thinking about the long-term health of the company, and it's evident by just watching the way they treat employees. Right now you have this issue of companies freaking out. Oh my God, we need competent people. Oh my God, it's horrible. We need to have all these people. Why can't we find anybody? And so on. Like, this is what this is the cry you hear from all the CEOs all over the world now. You needed to think about this 10 years ago, 15 years ago. That's when you think about this. But see, that would have been expensive to hire a bunch of people with aptitude, right? Not degrees. Fuck degrees. Like, I've never. The degrees, man. Oh my God, with the fucking degrees in this world. They don't do shit for you. It's usually some professor teaching shit that's 30 fucking years old. It has nothing to do with reality anymore. I see them all the fucking time. These guys are completely checked out of reality. They sound like Jamie fucking Dimon on CNBC talking about how awesome the economy is. Completely checked out of all fucking reality. Nothing in common with anybody out here in the real fucking world, right? It's always some delusional nonsense and total fucking propaganda. So the time to think about this kind of stuff is 10, 15 years ago. That's how for all you CEOs out there, if you know anybody who's a CEO of a company, send them this video. I charge a fortune, by the way, if I have to bail your ass out, because, you should know this shit. You shouldn't have to come to me. You shouldn't have to come to a fucking truck driver to tell you all this shit. And if you do, I'm going to charge a lot of money. And so they should have thought about this a long time ago. Had they thought about this 10, 15 years ago, then it would be very easy. You wouldn't have anywhere near the problems now. You would have hired people with aptitude, and you would have brought them up to speed. And you would have had to pay them, and you would have had to train them, supply them, all that kind of stuff. Develop and build loyalty and trust. How many companies do you trust and are loyal to anymore? How many companies are loyal to you? Right? That's kind of what's happened. So this is an overall degeneracy that you're seeing. This is a degenerative disease of the mind, if you want to think of it that way, that is happening from the top down. You can call it a mass psychosis. You can call it lead poisoning. I don't know. You can call it whatever the hell you want. But it's the same shit that happens every single time when you print money to nothing, and you destroy your currency, which destroys your division of labor, which destroys your competency, and it's a race to the bottom at that point. I have covered it repeatedly. I'm not talking to Karli specifically, but just in general, this is stuff that I've covered ad nauseum, and I don't know if it's and like I meant before, I said in my video a couple days ago and stuff, I don't know if this is getting through to too many people. I don't know how many people are hearing this. I don't know that this is getting any real major traction. I hope it is. I'd like to think so. But this is all painfully predictable behavior. This is so obvious what is coming, and it's right in front of you. I saw a video today. There was a guy. This is on. I was thinking about stitching it. I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that to somebody because it's a small account. I don't want to. I'm not trying to get the guy any heat or anything. But he was an employer, and he's talking about we're getting overwhelmed with Chat GPT, applications and resumes, and from fake fake job seekers. That's what we're getting overloaded with all this stuff. We're getting 80,000 resumes for a job, and for one job, and he's like, that's why we can't get to you. There's an easy solution to this. Corporate America, employers, small businesses, like the 8 or 9 of you left in this world. There's a solution to it. You just say, listen, show up in person. Don't bring it, dude. Just bring yourself. Just show up in person and talk to our manager who's actually hiring, not the fucking HR department. Okay, send all those fucking chicks home to have kids. Talk to the actual guy and find out can he work with you. That's it. That is the fastest solution to all of this, and that solves all this fucking problem. Hope that helps. But I hope that helps. Helps you too, Karli.